Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Scott Carlson. He's the General Manager for Defense and Intelligence at Unison. Scott, good to have you with us.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
An acquisition is on everybody's lips these days in the federal market, partly because so much reform is taking place. But reform is not the same as modernization.
Correct.
And from your perspective, maybe let's go into a definition of what does it mean to modernize acquisition and procurement as we know it now.
Tom, that's a great topic right now because reform is modernization at the same time. You know, they're making a lot of moves and changes to help streamline that for government and to help save taxpayers dollars there. But when you look at modernizing an acquisition environment, you look at a couple of things. Do you look at building your own, a COTS enabled solution, or do you start with a foundation that's built on COTS? COTS will get you a quicker, more proven, cost-effective solution. And so when we look at things, those are kind of the two sides of the coin that you want to look at.
And it seems like current policy is reinforcing what's actually an old idea of having commercial off-the-shelf first as your first consideration.
Yeah, the executive order came out in April on that. It was very clear, reinforcing that if we are going to modernize, and we are, you start with COTS as your foundation. It's proven, doesn't require re-engineering as technologies or requirements change, and it's a proven platform with a wider distribution of maintenance across the COTS implementation user base, and ends up being more effective from a cost perspective.
And by COTS, do you mean something that in its basic format might be also used in industry for acquisition and is adapted to government?
No, for federal acquisition, given the complexities of the FAR and the DFAR, the overall agency supplementals that guide how you're acquiring products and services, it's best to start with a federally focused COTS application or SaaS rather than going with a commercial solution that's then, I'll say, reconfigured or configured or tailored to the federal market. It never turns out well.
And it usually takes 20 years.
Well, yes, and it never adheres perfectly to the FAR and the DFAR, and it ends up becoming an audit nightmare for the agencies in the end.
So in other words, then we mean COTS, but adapted to a particular agency's mission and requirements.
Correct. So you take a federally focused or purposely built federal acquisition tool or COTS solution, and then you configure it or tune it, as you will, per agency business processes.
And often people conflate, let's say, modernization with business process automation.
Yeah.
But if you want to modernize the process, you don't want to automate it. You want to do something else first.
Right, right. So if you take a tool and basically configure it to the current business processes, you've kind of defeated the purpose. You want to look at the entire ecosystem of how you're doing procurements and then optimize that against the COTS solutions and adapt your business processes and then any specific configurations or tailoring to make sure that you remain compliant with those agency policies.
All right, so then, how do you begin that process? You don't install the software and run away with it. It sounds like you have some homework, groundwork to do initially.
Yeah, there's a very well-defined, as part of our systems engineering management plan at Unison, something called the Agile Implementation Methodology, AIM. And AIM has three phases: the program initiation part, the implementation, and then the operations and sustainment. Each of these have repeatable processes that are well tailored over the years through process improvement to deliver a completely implemented solution for an agency in 12 months.
All right, so before you get to the initiation, then you really have to kind of know what you're doing in detail.
Yes, subject matter expertise in the acquisition domain is part of Unison's core base. We have over 35 years of specific subject matter expertise in the evolution of not just the technologies that support our products, but also the domain of federal acquisition, both in the DoD, in the intelligence community, and in the civilian government agencies.
Right, and those are very different environments.
Yes, they
in
are.
a lot of ways.
Yeah, security domains as well as external government systems that they must provide certain updated information to for every procurement performed.
And there are some agencies that operate actually outside of the FAR, so that's kind of another instance that's not any of the three above in some ways.
That's correct. We have what's called non-appropriated fund organizations that support the morale and welfare for our soldiers, sailors, and Marines. And Unison provides for the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps their non-appropriated funds acquisition systems that operate throughout the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you're thinking about modernization, I mean, when people think about business process automation, they know what they want to do.
Right.
Push a button and a bunch of processes happen. How do you think about the goals for modernization? What are you really trying to do?
So first and foremost, we're trying to lower the PULT, or the acquisition timeline, okay? We're trying to optimize the process to allow the fewest number of 1102s or contracting officers required to actually do the job. So we're trying to optimize staffing, we're trying to optimize timeline, and we're trying to remain compliant so that you can audit these processes and, in the end, and come out with clean audits.
So the goal then is more efficient, to use the current term of art, you might say.
Efficient and effective.
Got it. And on this idea of the lowering the PULT, I mean, that is a benefit for industry as much as government also.
Absolutely, absolutely. Time to market or time to turn around an acquisition in a mission environment might be being able to put a solution or a weapons system into the field. It could be providing paper to an office. It could be providing systems engineering oversight services for a particular satellite development. It could be many, many things. But lowering that timeline increases the efficiency as well as lowers the time to get that product or service out to support the taxpayer.
And we've been talking about the FAR and acquisition regulations a lot, but there's been tremendous growth in other transaction authority procurements.
Correct. Different types of contracting. Yes.
Yeah, that policy seems to be mitigating in favor of because of this idea of speed and so forth. Can these commercial solutions in Unison also take that into account? Because you still have to be legal about it.
Yes, that's correct. So OTAs, CTAs have been around for a while. They've been in the Unison PRISM solution for many, many years. They are now becoming a more popular use that helps non-traditional contractors retain IP while they have the opportunity to provide their products and services to the government.
And in a modernization project, I mean, who should initiate this and who should be involved? Because the 1102s have certain responsibility, but you've got IT, you've got other functions that impinge on that particular mission set.
Yeah, so any modernization in the procurement area should involve three players. That's the CIO's office, the Senior Acquisition Executive, or HCA, or the Senior Procurement Official, and the Chief Financial Officer. All these systems and sort of the security aspects that govern them must be taken into account when you're doing a modernization.
And what are the elements of the business case, say, for the CFO? I mean, lowering PULT, you can probably quantify. Remaining compliant, maybe a little harder. What are some of those questions?
Yeah, so there's a lot of business around who controls the procurement request or the PRs that go in, whether you're creating them in the financial system or whether you're creating them in the contract writing solution or the acquisition management system. And those business processes need to be well defined so that they can, once again, support a clean audit for the service agency or the component of the government that's implementing these.
And nowadays, it's kind of hard to have a discussion on modernization without mentioning the introduction of artificial intelligence.
Correct.
And probably when Unison got started and so forth, and way back in procurement, this was unheard of. Now that's all you hear about.
Yeah.
So tell us about some of the ways that's coming into the modernization.
So, again, Unison being in the forefront of procurement automation and procurement solutions, we have been doing what's called RPAs, bots, for 5-10 years now. That's nothing new for Unison. We've been working in those for a long time. In the last several years, we've started researching and implementing AI, primarily around generative AI for creation of documents, much like a ChatGPT, but more focused and trained on specific FAR, DFAR agency supplementals. We've expanded that through our acquisition of a company named BidScale, who's now part of the Unison family, to provide generative AI for development and generation of pre-acquisition documents, quality assurance plans, statements of work, PWSs, synopsis, RFIs, things like that.
Right. I wonder if some of that kind of activity can maybe reduce the protest activity that happens pre-award, because that sinks so many of these multiple award contracts and so forth. I would think that maybe by combining a little bit of market intelligence and AI into these RFIs and so on, pre-procurement documents, so the whole process can go smoother.
Yeah, so we follow a very stepwise pattern of business through that process that helps lower the instance of pre-award protests, but we also provide a software evaluation tool for proposals that creates audits, auditable logs, and every action, so that if there is a protest, it's easily stepped through.
Got it.
And that's all through AI as well.
Right, so in other words, the AI can speed things up, but also get you closer to the mark, so to speak.
Correct.
And then that feeds the larger purpose of a shorter procurement cycle and speed and efficiency.
So AI ensures that what you're training the information on will be of a higher quality output and eliminate as much as possible any kind of human error. We use these products as assistants or agents, and so the human is always in control, so they can override what is put out, but what is generated is going to be of the highest quality and all-inclusive of every required element.
And on the technical side, a lot of agencies are looking at the low-code, no-code types of solutions to modernize. Do those get to the depth you need in your process to really modernize for you?
So, I don't want to just bash a whole technology, so that wouldn't be fair. But what I want to say is the BPMs or the low-code, no-code platforms are great for organizing an office and a very small, non-complex business process. When you get something as complex as acquisition lifecycle management, the numerous external government systems that you have to interface with, as well as the changing technologies that surround you, the complexity ends up sinking those solutions. And the amount of maintenance that's going to be required when there are changes to the technologies as well as the regulations are unknown at this time, and they're just going to have a real difficult time keeping those up.
All right, so to summarize all of this, I know I want to reduce procurement times, I know I want to be more efficient, I want to stop driving my 1102s crazy. Give us your best steps for getting started to that path of modernization.
So the first thing that I would recommend is basically looking for commercial off-the-shelf solutions, request information, market surveys to meet your agency's needs. Don't be overly specific with your requirements. Allow the COTS solutions to demonstrate the ability that is proven and useful in other segments of the government, and then determine the best path forward for redefining, re-engineering your business processes and how those can then fit into a commercial off-the-shelf product.
So you might find some insight across the hall.
You will find insight across the hall.
All right. Well, thanks so much for that insight. I want to thank today's guest. Scott Carlson is the General Manager for Defense and Intelligence at Unison. You're watching the video series Forward Under Pressure, Practical Paths to Modern Federal Acquisition. I'm Tom Temin, and for more on this discussion, please visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Unison.